canceled my Labor Day.
Welcome to Reality After Show coverage of The Challenge. We're talking season 40, episode 2. I'm your host, Dan Montchal, joined, as always, by Paulie Calafiore. And Paulie, before we get into tonight, I think where we need to start is going back into last week. What was it like, your reception, the reaction to... I get you were on USA 2. That was obviously, coming back to the challenge the first time. But there's something different about the flagship and the way that you just stole the end of episode 1.
Before I get started,
Sin, of course.
We got to fucking zin up. And after tonight's episode, your boy needs dose. 2 lower deckies. Am I a villain again?
I wouldn't say villain.
Are we back? I just have to say this. I prefer being the villain. I think I gave interviews after USA 2, and as much as I loved showing everybody another side of me, it made me feel so weird, losing and having people be sad, and I know that's part of my journey. That's part of my arc. But, after episode 1 and stealing the show, as we know that I love to do, I liked that there was 2 opinions. There were the people who were like, fuck yes, the challenge is back. And then there was I'll call them Reddit dwellers, right? Because they only exist in Reddit and their mother's basements, where they just sit there and they stew in their little Reddit world, and nobody pays any attention to them. Nobody cares about them. Nobody cares about their opinions until there's a time to chime in where there might be a little bit of bite. So I'm glad that I brought out the Reddit dwellers. I know you guys have been, starving. I know USA 2 didn't leave you guys much to grab onto because you would have looked like the absolute trash that you are. But I'm glad that you guys are out of the basement again. And I'm glad I could give that to you because I know it's the only joy you guys get in your lives. But I do appreciate all the people who still are riding that train with me from USA 2. But I liked how after episode 1, there was the 2 opinions, right? Because I truly believe that if you want shows to do great and be great, you need characters on the show that are going to have both opinions, right? And heroes, although we all love them, they get boring after a while. You need the villains on the show. But more so than anything else is you need that in the middle character where you have people who are going to have opinions on the good and opinions on the bad. So that's when I kind of felt like, all right, maybe the challenge is back.
I think the most important thing is just having an opinion because when I watch these shows, obviously do it from a little bit different lens because we're talking about it each week now. But, whether it's for this or it's just something I'm watching in my free time, if it falls under reality, make me feel something. I feel like the worst thing you can be on reality TV is someone that you forget that's there or you just have no opinion about. And going back to just, mention it's the people on Reddit that come out of the woodwork. They're just the most miserable bastards in the world because they're the same ones that on 39 that are being like, this isn't this isn't my show. What happened to the challenge? They're always going to find something to bitch about. They're just never happy.
Oh yeah, man. This is gonna sound crazy, right? So my journey in life has been pretty wild. A lot of the things that I've overcome, I think that the story that's never actually been told on TV is like, it's like, why are you the way you are, right? A little bit of it got told on USA too, where it was like, you're suppressing your sexuality. You've been this different person. But there's a lot of things that I've overcome in my life. So when people see me show up on the challenge and I'm immediately sitting there being like, I can win it all. It's because, I've accomplished a lot of crazy things in my life that I never thought was possible. Unless I was like a little crazy in my head, because to be a dreamer, you have to be a little crazy, because you're going to deal with the opinions of friends, family, people who don't know you, people who do know you. They're going to be like, hey man, why are you doing this? You should do that. Hey, why'd you quit your 9 to 5 to go into business for yourself? Hey, we're the same age. Like, my comfortable salary job is making 3 times as much as you're making right now. And in your mind, you have to sit there and be like, all right, but if I stick to what I'm doing right now, in 5 years, that person's salary is going to go up 20%, which maybe factors in inflation and all that stuff. But if I go those same 5 years on my own, I can have exponential growth depending on the input that I put in. And when I came on the show, and I always had that mentality as an athlete, I was never the biggest guy. Never the biggest guy in the room. I'd say, well, up until 8th grade, I was the biggest guy. Once it got past 8th grade, I stopped growing. Everybody else kept growing. And I used to have to wrestle, and I would weigh like 135 pounds, and I'd be wrestling like 145, 152 against like these grown-ass developed men. I'd be fighting against them too, because I didn't want to cut weight. I was like, I'd rather go up weight classes than cut weight. Soccer field, I was not tall, so I had to rely on like my agility, my explosiveness. And, to make it D1 and to make it pro, through all the injuries that I had, it took a certain level of like crazy, because when you get injured during prime times, during recruitment errors for college, everybody's telling you, hey man, you should hang it up. You should just go to school and just focus on a degree. Same thing in college. I got injured during very crucial times of like very crucial seasons of mine. And everybody was like, hey man, you should probably hang up that dream about being a pro. So my whole life, I've dealt with people telling me that I should not want to or think I can accomplish the things that were my dreams. And I've overcome all of those. So like when I came onto the challenge, I wanted to just be a challenge champion. I wanted to be known as one of the greats. And it takes a little bit of crazy to think that, especially as a rookie. And in your early seasons. But if not for those early seasons, and the way I was, would, after 4 years of being off the show, would people have even been asking for me back? When, you talk about season 39, and you talk about seasons before that where people are like, this isn't the challenge, this is boring. Wind the clocks back to when I was on the show, I was everything that was wrong with the challenge, right?
Of course.
And then in my absence, people were like, wait a second, no, we need that back. But if I wasn't that person on those first 3 seasons, would I even have had the chance to come back and show a different side of me? Whereas, people come on the show and they're worried about their image. They're worried about how the fans are going to receive them, and they're not really being authentically themselves. So it's like, although the feedback wasn't great, I was being authentically myself in that moment. And on USA 2, I was also authentically myself. And on this season, I was still authentically myself. But now I'm at a place where I'm like, I'm okay with what people say about me. I'm going to still be opinionated and say what I have to say, but I don't really have anything to prove anymore, because I've proven it, and I haven't won. But it takes a little crazy to think that after all of the losses, and I've lost in some epic fashions, Final Reckoning, leaving my partner, War of the Worlds 1, almost breaking my neck trying to be a showman, diving off a high thing, War of the Worlds 2, almost dying in the jungle. I've lost in some epic fashions. So like, to still think after losing like that you could come back and win, you have to be a little crazy. You got to be a little nuts.
Well, and I think what you'll see is, if we see you come back and you accomplish your goal, you become a champion, that narrative changes all the time, because I don't think you need to look much further than someone like Jordan, where you look at Jordan and he came on, he was going after bananas, he was going after the vets. He's saying, oh, you didn't earn, you have to go back in to earn your stripes. And he was kind of shit on the same way, like, who's this clown? What does he think he's doing or whatever? And then it's just like, okay, a lot of the times they're not fully appreciated until they actually get the wins. But I think all of them have that crazy, because you go back further, and I'm by no means saying we should go back and be harsher on people like CT and Wes. They're great characters for the show. They carried the show for so many years. But what you have to experience, what they didn't, was those first few seasons, they didn't have to worry about the social media backlash. So now we just get to look at it through the rose color lens of being like, I've always loved CT and Wes. They've been great guys the entire time, when it's just like, that isn't necessarily the case.
Right. I mean, and, like, we are subject to the era that we live in. I wish that, I was born in that generation. Of no social media, where you could go through the lumps of growth, and nobody could really comment on it, right? And then it's, once social media comes to be, it's like you're this new person and everybody's almost like on a bandwagon, like, we love you now. Unfortunately, for those of us who entered the TV scene in 2016 and beyond, because even when my brother went on TV in 2014, social media was still just emerging, and it was like a lot of like the teeny boppers, so it was all just like love, 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 love. It wasn't until as time goes on, there's real issues that come as people adapt to social media, and mental health is a huge thing right now, and I'm a huge proponent for it. But I feel like social media has become the outlet for people who are sometimes sad, and unfortunately, people who put themselves out there are the brunt of that sadness and that anger and aggression. And as much as I would like to, as much as I make fun of the Reddit people, the basement dwellers, I do sincerely feel for them, because I know that their lashing out comes from an inner pain. It comes from somewhere else, and I can relate to that because I understand that inner pain. I've had that turmoil in my life and in myself, before social media, with social media, all that stuff. So I get it. And if I'm the source of somebody's outlet that makes them feel a little bit better about themselves, who am I to take that away from them? Is it right? No, but I know what I'm signing up for. And I know that once I sign up to do this show or any show and put myself out there, that means that I am now the punching bag for everything. Whether you love it, whether you hate it, whether you feel good emotion, whether you feel bad emotion, you're going to let it out. But my gift that I would like to give to anybody watching is I want to make you feel something. And if I can do that, then I've accomplished something.
There you go. That's a good way to look at it. So if we start to kind of dive into episode 2, the episode starts and I immediately think I missed something because everyone's walking into elimination. I didn't realize what the format was going to be yet. I was like, whoa, I don't think I missed a week, but what's going on? It was a weird way how they edited the show. I think some things they did really well going about it this way. There were some other things as we're going through I have a few issues of, but it was a new way that we've seen them edit it. And I think it made sense overall for that way being able to go back to, because essentially this entire episode is just about the eliminations. And so I get why we're kind of jumping back and forth of seeing, 24 hours ago, because if you show everything right up front and then it's the 4th elimination, you're probably going to forget everything that led up to that.
100%. I thought that they were maybe going to lead into it with the cliffhanger of how the last episode ended. But there was just, I got to tip my hat to, the producers and the editing team, because it's like when you're thinking about an episode like this, how do you properly give everyone who's going into the elimination and possibly going home their story?
Mhm.
And I think that they did a great job of kind of capturing that while still sprinkling in the storyline that's at hand, right? So like you sprinkled in Anissa and what she is going to be feeling if she comes back based off of what just happened and her getting voted into elimination. You sprinkled in the Cara, Laurel, Bananas dynamic and what that's going to be like coming back. You gave hints at what could happen between Theo and Olivia. You gave hints at what the dynamic now is with Nerys gone, with me gone, with Amanda leaving. With Tony coming back into the game and he was pushing hard for Jordan, how that's going to play out. So I really think that with what they had to try and fit into this, with everything that they had to try and fit into this episode, I think they almost could have brought it into 2 episodes. They could have had 2 eliminations and spread out the storyline, and 2 eliminations on the next episode and spread out the storyline. But once again, you can't please everybody. So if they did that, they would have the people being like, why wouldn't you put all the eliminations in one episode? Right. So it's like, I feel for production and I feel for the editing team, because I feel like they always have a gun to their head and it's hot. And no matter what decision they make, it's like a Sophie's choice.
Yeah, I mean, I look at it and I think to myself, like, I would have loved to seen some of the conversations between the winners from the air when they were in the chamber. But also looking at it is, if you're going to add that in and that's going to be a 5 to 7 minute segment, what are you cutting to still make it all fit into one episode? And that's where, of course, people are always going to complain. But is there, I guess, before we go through each individual elimination matchup, was there anything big that happened that night post chamber that didn't make the cut that you think would be relevant to know or talk about?
I mean, I would say mainly just me and Cara just constantly talking and going around and being like, when we come back, the whole house is getting turned on its head. You're all fucked. Mainly just that. I mean, there was a lot that happened pre-chamber that Cara and I were witnessing, where it really was the whole house, looking at her and I as a threat and kind of being like, we don't want another War of the Worlds 2 situation. And if we give them any wiggle room, they're going to take it. Right. So post chamber was basically like, okay, you guys drew the line in the sand. Fuck all of you. Don't play the victim when we come back and we flip the game on its head, because you did this. You brought this on yourselves.
Mm-hmm. I guess that's just how you got to do it. But so we go into, we're all at, I'm not sure if we're calling it the arena, whatever, just the sand, the elimination arena for this season. And we see that it's going to be, from era 1, it's balls in. From era 2, it's pole wrestle. 3 is hall brawl. And 4 is take shelter. How did they determine which era was playing which? Because we did see the little scenes of, like, it was Leroy going over and picking, it was you and Theo. But how did they end up determining that?
So it went by era. So there was a board that had 4 slabs on it that were facing the wall. So we couldn't see what was on the cards. Era 1 got to pick first. They went up, random draw. They picked and turned it around, and it was pole wrestle. Era 2 went up, random draw, picked. It was gimme shelter. Random 3 went up, picked. It was balls in. Me and Theo knew what the last one was. So we just walked up, holding hands, being like, all right, we're about to do this. And that's how it was essentially picked. So, I can't be, there's a lot of things where you can like beat yourself up on. But I can't beat myself up too much. And I don't think anybody really can because, there was a 25% chance I was going to get a hall brawl. So there was a 75% chance that I was going to get an elimination that was tipped in my favor, and I was left with the one that was kind of like, you know, um, and it was just tough. I mean, it's a monumental season. It's a pinnacle season. To me, people coming into the game and usually you have like a 1 in 20 chance of going in if there's 40 people, right? So as a guy, I'm like, all right, I got a 1 in 20 chance of going in. So I just got to be liked more than 18 people here.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point in the game, I was. And then, if you do get picked, you go in there and you're like, all right, there's a 3/4 chance that I'm going to get an elimination I want. And that's, 1/4 chance that I'm going to get an elimination that's like, shit, I can't win this. The whole thing was a perfect storm of like, shit, this just didn't work out in my favor. And and anybody that went into that elimination has to look at it that way because you go from a 1 in 20 chance of going in to a 1 in 3 chance of going in just because you didn't win or didn't come in last. Mm-hmm. So if you were one of those middle people, you had a 33% chance of going in. And, at that point, you're fighting against your own team and it's set up in a way where you don't want to cause a rift in your team, but you also don't want to go in,
Mm-hmm.
Unless you're like Derek or me and you're just like, fuck it.
So you mentioned, Hall Brawl is obviously the one that didn't stack in your favor. If you had to pick any of the other 3 to go in against Theo, what would have been your preference of choice?
I would have preferred, a pole wrestle because that would have catered to my jiu-jitsu background and my wrestling background. Balls in would have been fine too because that would have catered to, my soccer and my wrestling background. Those 2 would have probably fit me the best. Give me shelter is like a 50-50 shot. And, who wants to see me and Theo go in on a gimme shelter and have somebody win?
Well, we hear you're good at tying knots, so I don't know.
Apparently, the rumors have it. The NDAs will never tell.
The way they end up picking the order for how the eliminations are going to play out, at least how we see it on screen, is by era. So era 3 got balls in, so that's where we're starting. And we see first up that it's going to be Nia versus Amanda, and it's just Hail Mary for Amanda. Like that's a rough draw.
Yeah, poor girl. Amanda is shifty, she's quick and everything, but with the way that was set up where all you had to do was get to the first rope, all Nia had to do was basically take a step in and fall down. You know what I mean? It's almost like the QB sneak, you just got to push 1 yard and then get the first down. So Amanda had a huge hill to climb in that, I don't think anybody saw her pulling that out of her pocket. And that's just how it went.
I was happy we at least got one more, Amanda Gold clip of the flashback with Corey just berating him and essentially saying, if I come back, I will throw every mission until your ass goes home. I've done it before. I'll do it again.
Listen, that's why we love Amanda. We love Amanda for that. She's the best.
But yeah, poor, she ended up getting that first point. I think Nia kind of fell asleep. And this is where it's going to go into, I think it was one of, I don't want to say issues with the editing, but something that I wish they would have changed was this is where we saw the first example of Nia when she's going for that first point, the ball falls backwards and it wants to give you that false hope that, ooh, Amanda might pull it off. And we kept, once is all right, twice is okay. But when we saw it 3 or 4 times, because we saw it there, we saw it with Katie going against Anissa, with Nerys going against Olivia, and then even hinting that, oh, maybe Kellyanne's going to beat Cara. Just, God, you can't do this every time, because now as soon as I see that, it's okay, they're not winning.
Right. Well, we the editing team, they had a tough spot this episode, because it's like, how do you make it engaging when it's clear as day that Anissa and Nia were going to win?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? If anything, they could have, and I think they did, they did Amanda and Katie a favor on, how they edited them, to be fighters. Because realistically, down there watching one-on-one, both of those eliminations went exactly how mine and Theo's went.
Okay, so not quite as much fight on both of those as what we were led to believe.
100%.
Okay.
So I would have left the cliffhanger to like the gimme shelter.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Because then at least you get the audience on the edge of their seats. Like, holy shit, Cara might lose. She just watched Paulie lose. Like, what the fuck?
No, I think that's one that could have worked, especially because as we were talking through the different eliminations, that's one that a toss up. That's where we saw Jay upset CT. That's the one where we're most likely to get the chance of that upset. So that makes sense. If we're moving on to the guys from Era 3, I think what may have been the performance of the night was not a shocker that Tony won, but a shocker that Tony dominated from what we saw anyway.
No, I was very shocked at that. I thought Leroy had a little bit more fight in him, but him and I talked afterwards, and he was like, "Man, Tony hit me that first time," and I was like, "I don't want to do that again." He's like, "So I don't know how your dumbass like got up and was like, yeah, I'll just run into Theo again." He goes, "Bro," he goes, "I wouldn't even did the hall brawl." It made me feel a little better, but I was like, "Hey, man, I still lost that."
I mean, yeah, I guess that makes more sense because that's just how some people are. Is the first time they get hit. I mean, they say that's how basketball players are made. Was they go out to play football and the first, after the first practice where they get drilled, it's like, nope, not for me. Like, need something that has a little less contact.
Everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face,
There you go. Absolutely. So far we see Nia go through, Tony go through. The only thing else to note is Tony's a little upset that, his boy Bananas is rooting for Leroy, but what did you expect? We know how close Bananas and Leroy are.
Yeah, I mean, I'm past the point of like getting upset at things that are the obvious. You know what I mean? And I know that there's a little bit of an element of everybody thinks they're closer to somebody than they are. But, if I was going in an elimination against Leroy, I'm really close to Cam, but am I going to expect her to root for me?
Of course.
Exactly. So it's like, Tony's what are you doing, man? Leroy's Bananas boy. Yeah. He's never not going to pull for him.
The thing that I did love about it is Tony makes the comment of being like, "Oh, I know we both have, kids back at home." And it was kind of just like the Spider-Man meme of just, like we both have it. We can't both do it. So I guess we'll just let it go, which was all right. We got enough in episode 1. We don't need to keep this going.
Challenge parents. Put them all on one season. Get it all out of the way, episode 1. Nobody talks about it again.
I will say we don't need to make a point. There were only 4 references this episode, so we did cut that in half. Hopefully we keep that trend moving. But I don't know. So. Tony and Corey.
I think the only reason why I was cut in half is because you're not going to be able to fit in all the kids' references into an elimination episode.
Yeah, worried about that one as well.
Yeah.
But moving on, we go to Era 1. This is pole wrestle. most fitting thing of anyone that's in the challenges is that Derek has pole wrestle. It's just what the challenge gods decided.
And honestly, this wasn't even the challenge gods deciding. This was the actual gods deciding that Derek lined up to go. I mean, like, here's the thing about it is, like, these episodes, you have to appreciate them for what they are, because you can't write that stuff. You can't make it up. You can't, like, force it to happen that way. Derek getting pole wrestle when that's his reputation is just one of those things that I feel like would only happen on season 40 with the planets aligning the way it did. And for him to come out victorious, it's like, the thing that I like about it is, it's like, how many more seasons can you expect Era 1 people to be on? Right? So to have people be able to get their, like, cherry on top, like, staple win, like, that's something that I appreciate. As somebody watching the episode back, I didn't really appreciate it in the moment, because I was like, damn, I really want the pole wrestle. But seeing Derek get pole wrestle, known as the pole wrestle king, and then win pole wrestle, it's one of those moments where, looking back on it, it's like, damn, I was there for that moment.
Yeah,
And
that's his curtain call, because even if he comes back on a main season or an All-Stars, the chances of, as you mentioned, all the stars aligning again for him to have a pole wrestle, it's likely not going to happen. Or as he does continue to get older, the chances of him getting another win, if he's going against someone younger, they're going to start to take a drastic hit. So no matter what Derek does the rest of the season, he at least always has this of, I got to go back for season 40. I got to do another pole wrestle, beat the Godfather. And I think that's something he can always hang his hat on.
100%. And it gives him, because a lot of people, obviously his last pole wrestle-esque thing was against Joss. So it's kind of amazing to see that, 5 years later, he does the same thing.
Mm-hmm. He's another one of those, as you were talking, is crazy enough to believe, is that's always been Derek's story.
That's Derek. That's Derek to a T.
So we, unfortunately, be the end of The Godfather. We see Mark go home, and then we go into Katie versus Anissa. And I'm glad you mentioned that it went exactly the way we expected, because I was a little confused, because as soon as I had it, I was like, I don't think I need to write anything down about this. Like, this seems pretty clear cut. I love you, Katie, but this one ain't for you.
Yeah, no, this is, and she knew that. The only thing that sucks is, it's like, Katie and Anissa are actual, like, good friends. So, but it is what it is,
The only thing I took at it as being more concerning was, we see the conversation between her and Rachel and how she's so upset, and then goes to Tori for kind of the comfort. And I was just, oh no, does this mean the Vacation Alliance going to target Rachel? Because I don't want to see that.
Well, the Vacation Alliance only targets the people outside of the Vacation Alliance, and, then picks off the people lower on the list. So, I mean, I think the Vacation Alliance looked at Rachel as an asset. And I think Rachel knew that. And I think Rachel leaned into that, so even though Anissa was talking to Tori, it's like, Rachel has a great relationship with Tori. Rachel has a great relationship with Josh. Rachel has a great relationship with Johnny. You know what I mean? Like, she was never going to be a target because she's a strong competitor.
That's true. She's a strong competitor. And I think sometimes I forget how well connected she is through her workout plans, where she's someone that if you don't pay attention to that, I don't think you'd realize how many connections she really has throughout not just this show, but the challenge community.
And she's just a likable person. Like, some people just have it. Like, they have that Riz. Rachel's got the Riz.
You can see that. That makes sense. And then, we gotta get all of our Cara and Paulie time while we can. So even before we get to Hall Brawl and everything, this is where we see Cara calls out, Bananas and Laurel for being obsessed with her. We see, your confrontation with him. I'm sure there was a lot more to it than what we actually saw.
Yeah, there was. I mean, my reaction to Bananas, it was genuine. Like I really like going into this season. Like my biggest thing that I wanted was Cara and Bananas to mend stuff so that the three of us can work together. And Bananas is at a different point in his career. And he knows who he can trust and he knows who he can't trust. So the Vacation Alliance is always going to have his back. And even though him and I just mended things, the fact that he had this question mark on Cara and he knows the kind of influence that she can have over me, I understand it. But to me, when I put things to rest, like I'll tell people straight up if the rivalry's still on. Like after me and Theo, I was like, bro, hey, listen, it's still on, bro. Like, congratulations on your win. Enjoy it. Relish in it. You were the better man. But I'm coming for you. With Bananas, it really wasn't that way. I said to him, listen, man, I will always have your back. I'm not going to pull any shady shit. And that's my word. And that is my word. So I was a little torn up and I was a little hurt by that. But I wasn't about to lose my mind on Bananas because it's like, his mind was made up, and feeding into like losing your mind on Bananas when he makes a move in order to try and stoke that flame. It only makes you look worse because the rest of the house is going to side with him. And so I had to stay composed in that moment, and choose my battles wisely.
I think it was an uphill battle for you and Cara, not simply because he is so well protected by the Vacation Alliance, but when you add in, he has all these connections with Era One, like your Marks and your Derricks, and Emily Schramm's back, Laurel's there. And this is probably the most well insulated he's been on a flagship show in quite a while, like from the right out of the gates.
Oh yeah, I mean, when you have 38 of the 40 cast members on your side, I mean, he was chilling. Realistically, the only people that he knew were uncontrollable were me and Cara, right? And the thing is, it's like he's smart enough to know that even though we mended our relationship, that I'm still the type of player where when push comes to shove and it's getting down the line, I will make a decision that I think is going to set me up to win. And it's credit to him, to be honest, because he makes finals and he's got a chance of winning, but also the longer he stays in the game, the more sway he has over the game. That's just him.
Yeah, we see that season after season. And before we get to, I'm sure, what everyone wants to hear you talk about, I have it in my notes. I have to ask a question. So according to Kellyanne, she's somewhat close with you and Cara.
Yeah, Kellyanne, she's been to our place in Montana. We've hung out with Kellyanne a ton of times. That's our girl. We love Kellyanne. She's always been good to us. And Cara and I were loyal people to a fault. So it sucks that Kellyanne and Cara were where they were in the sand. But once again, credit to the Vacation Alliance. They saw where the numbers lied. And while everybody else is trying to play like, where do I fit in? Where do I fit in? They've got a plan and they've got a game plan. So as much as it seems like these elimination matchups were whatever, they're very smart. So like they knew that if they could sway the house to or make the decisions when they had the power, because you don't know when you're going to have the power, you take your shots early. So right out of the gate, you're eliminating numbers between Cara and Kellyanne, me and Theo, Nerys and Horacio. And and that's really it in a nutshell. And even Amanda, right? Everything was coordinated, planned, carried out according to plan.
So that was a fantastic answer. I was taking us on a little bit of a left turn there when I brought up Kellyanne. I have some follow-up questions. Maybe this can be done at a future time. I need to know about her psychic for a cat, because that just gave me way more questions than answers.
I've never once heard her talk about her psychic for a cat. I didn't even know she had cats. I thought she only had dogs.
Why
So
doesn't she have psychics for them?
I learned. Honestly, that line threw me for a loop, but that's such a Kellyanne line. Like, if that were to come out of anybody else's mouth, I'd be like, that makes no sense. But it coming out of Kellyanne's mouth makes perfect sense.
It was my favorite line of the episode, just because it seems so out of place as well. But I get it from the editor's point of view, because there's no point where you can put that line in where it fits with everything else. And I think it's just, all right, we're just going to put it here because people need to hear this.
Yeah, it's one of those lines where it was like so gold. And I know that in the interview room, as soon as it came out of her mouth, whatever producer was there, like jotting down the notes that like, I got this line, they were like, nailed it. It's being used.
We will definitely be seeing this on the show.
Yeah, like in all the producer notes that they had, in like big bold letters with like stars around them, was like this line, and like a side note that says, "Put this somewhere," and they just fit it in.
Yeah, that's forever grateful that we heard that, because that was something I wasn't expecting, but was great. But we're at Era 4. We're at Hall Brawl. I'm just going to turn this over to you. You take this in whatever direction you want to take us.
No, man, I want to know what it was like for you, and then I'll tell you exactly what it was like for me.
So me watching it, didn't love seeing that you got Hall Brawl. Some of the other things is I love the hype up, the trailers that we see for the season, but they did enough little things there that made me think, oh no, like Theo's probably going to win this. Just like the same way of you saw the scene that's from further on down the line where Laurel's doing her typical Laurel bullshit and attacking Cara, and she's being comforted by Ryan. And you think, okay, so I know Ryan's going to survive, still there. And because we don't see you at any point in time was just another, bad sign. For me, watching it, it was just, we were kind of talking before we went on air, is I would have loved to seen this Hall Brawl back in World of Worlds 1 or 2, when he was still kind of fresh Olympian Theo. We're sure he was faster, but he didn't have on as much weight as he does now. He has all this additional weight, and it's such a weight-driven game. I had bad feelings.
Yeah, out of all the people there, Theo's the only one who didn't lose weight. I mean, I get he never worked out. He never did anything. He just stayed inside and ate, and he kept his weight. And I was banking on the fact that he would lose some weight, and he just didn't. You know what I mean? Like, he came in 265, and I was like, that's a thick boy. Would I have preferred to go against 200-pound Theo? Yes. Did it cross my mind that he's a much bigger person when I nominated myself? Also, yes. Did I care? No. I took tons of physics classes, so in my mind, I kind of knew how it was going to play out. But once again, I turned that switch on. That was like, it's got to play out in a different way, because at that point, you're not even talking to yourself in terms of winning and losing. You're talking to yourself in terms of, how do I come away with this without any serious injuries?
Mm-hmm.
And the only way to come away with it without any serious injuries is to put yourself in the mindset that you're winning, so that your body's loose. Because if you're scared, if you're nervous, your body's going to be tight, and then on impact, you're going to have injury. And it could have been any injury, right? It could have been a neck, could have been a face, could have been a shoulder, could have been a wrist, could have been a knee, ankle, shin, anything. So my only mindset going into it was, all right, he's much bigger than me, right? At that point, I was like 165. I lost weight while I was there. 5'9". He's 6'6", coming in 265. Didn't lose much weight. So he might have been like 260 there. So right out of the jump, I'm giving up almost 100 pounds and 9 inches. Every scenario went in my head of what I should do in that elimination, but I've seen hall brawls on every season I've done. War of the World, other than Final Reckoning, I'm sorry. War of the Worlds 1, it was a longer hall brawl. And in a longer hall brawl, you can kind of see the person as they're coming into you and hitting. So you could kind of start to, kind of jockey for height and center of gravity. On War of the Worlds 2, it was the slalom hall brawl where, you're not getting full speed at each other. You're getting full speed, slowing down. So where you hit depends on whether you're lining up at the end of a hall and accelerating or turning a corner. This hall brawl was smaller. It was maybe 10 feet long. So when you think about that, Theo's already 6'6". If he lays down, he's already in the middle. Before you can even gauge where the person is, you're already on impact. So your brain doesn't have the capability to react fast enough, unless you're a cat, to know where you got to be. So I was kind of in that mindset of, do I have enough space to take a second step and jump over him? Can I get lower than him? Or should I just run up to him and sprawl and try and wrestle him? And, as all these combinations going in your head, you're starting to think, if I don't jump in time and he runs through, he's hitting my knee or shin or ankle full speed and something's breaking. You're also thinking, in mine and Theo's case, we take up the width of the whole hall, right? So you're trying to calculate where are they going to turn and put their head to lay into you, right? So if I go this way and he goes that way, we're lining up shoulder to shoulder, and that's a hit. But if we line up same way, we're going head to head, and is that a neck injury? Is that a friggin' broken eye socket? Is that a, broken jaw? All these scenarios are playing in your head before you're running down that hall. And once you walk up and put your hands on the wall, you've got maybe 3 seconds before TJ goes, all right, Paulie, Theo, you ready? Go. Right? So before you walk up and put your hands on the wall, you have to have this all figured out. And in a hall brawl that short, you're not getting that. You know what I mean? Like, you're just like, I hope I get low enough. I hope I tuck my head to the right side. And, in this case, we both went to the same side and went head to head. And, I immediately got concussed. I probably shouldn't even did the second round, but I just did because I'm an idiot.
Well, that's something that maybe I get why they wouldn't want to show. Oh, Paulie's so tough. He did it with a second concussion for numerous issues. But just mentioning, there have been people in the past that had something messed up with their finger and chose not to go for another round of hall brawl. So I think it says a lot about you.
I appreciate it, man.
Yeah. But yeah, it's just a tough one. Unfortunately, just not a whole lot you could do, and not what we wanted to see here, but that's all right.
Yeah, it happens.
Yeah, it's, from everything that we're seeing online, you were doing it for a few reasons. You were doing it because to give the Brits finally something to win on the challenge, because generally it's only Jordan who does that for the Brits because he has 2 titles wearing a Brits jersey. And also, you already found Cara. You didn't want to get in the way of young love of him and Olivia. So that was just romantic in you.
It's true. It was the hopeless romantic in me. I want to see true love.
But before we move on, the one thing that I was thinking as we were watching all these eliminations is a lot of these are set up for the rivalries, or there's been some type of rivalry already taking place. Obviously, you and Theo, the Nerys and Olivia, Cara and Laurel. Does anytime they're on a season, it's mentioned. All I could think of was, if I'm the producers and if this season continues to go in the same direction that it does, how do you not do a rival season for 41 and 42? Would you actually want to work with Theo in that type of season, or do you just want to go back to get your revenge?
I want revenge, for sure. When you lose in that manner, right? And I've done plenty of sports. When you lose in a team aspect, right, like playing soccer or football or anything, you can always kind of hide behind other things and other players. In wrestling and in fighting, when you have some hard battles, right? Like that's what people remember. And I've had this happen to me. Like I've stepped on wrestling mats and got manhandled. I've stepped into jiu-jitsu tournaments and got absolutely manhandled. I've stepped into MMA rings and got fucking knocked out. When you get manhandled by a man like that, you wake up in a different mindset. You're just like, that just fucking happened to me. And the only thing that you think about from there, you have two ways of going. You either are like, that's it, I'm submitting, that person now owns me. Or you go back to training and you put that motherfucker's picture on the wall with a dagger in their forehead and you stare at it every single time that you want to quit. The point where I'm at now is Theo's picture's on the wall. There's a dagger in his forehead. And every time I go and I train, I'm just thinking about that motherfucker, and I'm thinking about what just happened and what I just had to witness and relive. And I'm not going to be satisfied until I get my Rocky versus Mr. T moment. And that's just how it is, and that's just how it has to be. As a man, you cannot get manhandled like that by another man and be okay with it. You cannot go into the next season and be like, hey, bro, we're cool. I want to avoid you. No, it's not happening that way.
I assume that's what the answer was, but just I had to throw it out there.
Of course.
And then we have, I don't know, I'd say less exciting hall brawl of poor little Nerys.
Oh man, I love Nerys. I really do. She was just in a bad position. Any woman on Era 4 going against her in that, poor girl was freaking losing.
There was no matchup where she was potentially winning, especially if they could have, I guess, looked at it and said, oh, you're doing hall brawl, who do you want? I guess Olivia was probably still her best bet outside of, you'd think, Michelle, but you couldn't pick Michelle because she won and she really had no choice. So
yeah, there was no choice. It was a lose-lose for Nerys. But once again, credit to the Vacation Alliance. They convinced, the house. I mean, I probably should have thought more strategically rather than with ego, knowing that Nerys was already going down to the floor and that was a number of mine. I should have tried to avoid the sand just for numbers and political purposes, but I just couldn't do it once I heard Theo was asking for me. So,
Well, I mean, without it, we wouldn't have had the moment. So sometimes the moment's bigger.
the moment was big.
It's something that I think we'll remember. Where had you didn't, it just would be like, all right, remember that deliberation from Era 4 in episode 1? No one would ever remember it. So
Listen, this to me is my bananas backpack moment. So what happens after this moment? Do I come back and win a whole bunch and, have people be able to throw this moment in my face, but I could turn around and say, look at the championships? Or, do I fizzle out?
that's a good way to look at it. And I think I know which way we're all hoping that it goes. So, this is just the beginning of the comeback.
That's it. You can't climb the mountain until you hit rock bottom. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. So yeah, unfortunately, Nerys loses here as well. We did see a little bit of it in the episode. Was it that bad between Horacio and Nerys where they weren't talking to anyone other than themselves? Or was that just kind of played up for camera?
That was played up. I mean, like, I had plenty of conversations with them. I worked out with Horacio every day. Nerys talked to Cara a whole bunch. Like, they're a young couple. Let them have their moment. They're allowed to enjoy it for a season. You know what I mean? Cara and I did it on War of the Worlds 1.
Of course. 2. Yeah, I figured that's what it was. They were just playing it up because she was getting ready to go home, but just had to check. And so now we get back to, I guess, what everyone else wanted. I guess the next best thing that everyone wanted to see was Cara. Like, that's where everyone's attention was going to go to. What's going to happen with her because she's being thrown in. I can't imagine Take Shelter would have been her preference of what she would have wanted.
No.
Yeah. But anything can happen.
The way I look at it with Cara is going into that elimination, if she got any of the eliminations other than Take Shelter or Give Me Shelter or whatever, she's winning. There's no question about it. She's manhandling Kellyanne. Kellyanne's feisty, but Cara's even feistier. This was the only one that there was a question mark on. Mm-hmm. But from what I know of Cara is she just finds a way to win no matter what. Mm-hmm. And she proved it again.
Unfortunately, I like him, so it's not to throw much shade, but we couldn't say the same thing about Brandon because that was the one where you saw, it's Take Shelter. It's not one of the physical ones. Like, it wasn't a guarantee that Ryan was going to come back and win. Like I said, outside of the spoiler, seeing that he was in a future scene. But when you saw that they got Take Shelter, it started to make a lot more sense.
Yeah, without a doubt. I think all the men on the sand were sitting there praying, give me anything but Take Shelter. And all the women were saying, other than Cara, all the women were saying, give me Take Shelter. Mm-hmm. So that was that.
No, that's a good way to look at it. And I do want to give Cara her props here because I think she's in a really unique situation here where it isn't just that, she lost you at some point in the game. She's losing you tonight. Just saw it happen. And I think there's a lot of people where they kind of check out or they're not all there to lock in that they can pull out a win like that. So for her being able to think, hey, I need to do this for my game, getting locked back in and winning this elimination, it says a lot about her.
100%. And I will give credit to a few people. CT, not being afraid to stick his neck out on the line and openly help her. Jordan, they didn't show it too much, but Jordan was openly helping Cara on that.
So that would have been interesting to see.
Yeah, I got to give credit to both of those guys because they knew that Era 2, well, few people on Era 2, didn't want Cara back. And they knew that the Vacation Alliance didn't want Cara back. But they still, given their GOAT status, said, we're supporting a fellow GOAT. And I respect that of them.
No, that CT doesn't surprise me. Jordan doing it does surprise me. Obviously, we've seen that you've become more friendly with Jordan. We know that you did Zach's live event a few weeks ago where, I imagine Cara and Jordan spoke a lot together. So that's the one that's always going to be the most surprising, because I don't think it was as much as a rivalry at first between you and Jordan as necessarily it was between Cara and Jordan.
Oh, yeah. I mean, coming into the season, Jordan and I are realistic in the sense where we're like, big targets got to protect big targets. Cara and Jordan, there was once again the question mark, but I feel like Jordan has always done a good job after War of the Worlds 2, because we all remember the Vendettas reunion. But after War of the Worlds 2, Jordan has always done a good job giving Cara her flowers and giving her props. Mm-hmm. And I think that the respect has been built.
And he's one of the few people, we know how bananas is that, once you're his vendetta or against him, it's really hard for that to change. Maybe it's something about you, Paulie, that we've seen that change, but for the most part, it seems like an uphill battle where Jordan has always done a better job of kind of separating game and personal. And we saw it, I think, going back to like All-Stars 3 of him trying to work with Wes, being like, hey, it was a game we used to go after each other. This is good for both of us. He does seem to be realistic in that way he goes about it.
100%.
And so, that gets us to, we see Cara wins. We see Ryan wins. That's all the eliminations. And what can you tell us more about these karma points? Because this is something new.
I mean, I'm not going to lie. I was hoping TJ said something about a redemption house because, I'm the king of that. The karma points are an interesting twist. I don't know how I felt about him because I don't know how I feel about people having to be nice in order to get karma points. And I do feel like there's times in the game where you can't be nice, and there's times in the game where you have to make choices. And I feel like a decision for $1 million being based off of that kind of sucks, but it adds a interesting twist to what the game is, and I think it is going to have a deciding factor on who the champion is.
My initial thought was I don't like it, just because why should how you treat someone in a game? I get, everyone wants to be treated nice, but how you treat someone in a game, if you're going to do it cutthroat to win and it pays off, there shouldn't be a twist at the end being like, well, you weren't nice enough to these people, so you don't get to win the show now. No idea what ends up happening if it comes into play at all for how it's determined who wins. Just we'll see. We'll see how it plays out. I think to really determine how I feel about it, but
I had that same sentiment when that was the twist. I was like, man, somebody goes through this grueling ass season in Vietnam. They get to the end and it's like, you won, psych. Somebody else won because you weren't nice.
Yeah, that's got to be a tough pill to swallow. But I will admit, as TJ was talking, I did think he was about to say that there's a redemption house.
I was praying for it. Cara was like, hype me up as she's walking away. She's like, you come back. You come back. And I'm like, I'll come back, baby. And then that was it.
Get so lucky.
I know. Didn't get lucky this time around. I had one redemption house in my career, and I was very lucky with that.
Yeah, but to be fair, not to go over past history, but that was the first time where they had, it was obviously you and Natalie in your first elimination going against, was it Cam and Kaylee? And when it wasn't the exact pairs going up, they hadn't quite figured out, all right, we need to make this harder, but they couldn't figure out to what level. So I'm going to pass for that.
The equalizers on Final Reckoning were questionable. We'll just say
best.
Questionable at best. I don't remember ever having an equalizer against the male teams, the same way that Cam and Kaylee had an equalizer against me and Natalie. But we'll leave that up to, they were just figuring it out.
Fair enough. And Obviously, Paulie's going to continue to join us all season long. So unfortunately that he isn't won't be in the house. We still will be getting his takes each and every week as we go live at Wednesday at 10 p.m. And if you want to see Paulie and Cara in person, come to Charlotte, North Carolina, September 11th. It's going to be Paulie. It's going to be Cara Maria, an event hosted by Jonny Fairplay. You can get tickets for that at challengetix.com. That's challengetix.com. September 11th, Charlotte, North Carolina, Protagonist Beer Company. You can go there. You can get general admission. It's going to get you into the event. That's good. But if you really want the full experience, go VIP. That's going to get you in a full hour earlier. The meet and greet with Paulie, with Cara, with Jonny. Good environment, hangout. I think the VMAs were a kind of question about if the episode's going to be on. But even if the VMAs are on and we can't actually watch the show, I talked to Jonny beforehand. We're going to be showing some clips, and we're just going to throw a full-on challenge party instead if we can't watch the episode.
It's going to be a good time regardless, guys. You're going to be hanging out with us.
Absolutely. And I think that's going to do it for us. Paul, is there anything you need to plug or want to talk about before we hop off?
September 11th, challenge viewing party, Charlotte, North Carolina. Be there.
Let's go. As always, if you're watching on YouTube, please hit the bell, subscribe. That way you get notified every time we go live. We have tons of podcasts coming each and every day. Reality After Show. If you're listening on Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you get your podcasts, please like and review. Give us 5 stars. It takes a few seconds. It helps us out tremendously. Until next time, that's obviously Paulie. I'm Dan. We will see you next Wednesday night at 10 p.m. for episode 3. Thank y'all.
Later, y'all.